Every now and then in American history, there are stories that need to be told. Reverend Sue takes you into the home of one of the greats of the greatest. We appreciate his service, and we ask him about him being an American, and an American hero, as a matter of fact. And now here's Reverend Sue with the Tuskegee Airmen.
Control. I got Satan on my trail, but I'm singing all is well. He's attacking every day, but I'm watching while I pray. No matter the attack, I won't turn back.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening. We have a special guest, William Billy Funtroy, Tuskegee Airman, and we are also in his home this evening. So we thank Billy for giving us the opportunity to talk to him. We're still celebrating Veteran Day, and Billy just has so much knowledge and information, and we're still learning about the Tuskegee Airmen. And Billy, we just want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. It's a joy to have you.
Well, it's a joy for me to be here and discuss something that God has blessed me to meet and work with people who have did an awful lot to make sure that the Nazis didn't take over the United States of America. And I'm very proud to be associated with them. I'm the little baby in the bunch, but those guys were top-notch. They were the best in the Air Force. Even though they were thought to be unable to do anything technical as far as that's concerned, as far as military was concerned.
And I invite you for it because you was 18 years old when you actually went into the military. And just think about this: you volunteered. Your mom, I don't think they really knew exactly what you were planning to do, and you kept it a little secret during that time.
I tried to keep it a secret, but I couldn't because I had to get permission from my mother to even take the test to see if I could be in the Air Force, in the Army Air Corps it was then. And I think she signed it because I had not finished high school. And she said the dummy can't pass a test. And I surprised her and the people I took the test from that I did pass it.
Yeah, and that's something, when I think about the first black military pilots, I mean, the first black, and then the first black officers, right?
Right.
Through the first black officer in the military.
Oh, no. General Davis, Sr., was a general even before World War II started. General Davis was the father of General Davis, Jr., who was the first Tuskegee Airman out of the military academy. But General Davis, in fact, the big joke in Washington at the time was that whenever we had a drill, General Davis would make sure that the Dunbar High School would win because that's where his son went. That's not true, but that was, how we start gossiping and making up stuff.
And that's pretty much what we do. But we thank God for the opportunity of people getting to know more about the Tuskegee Airmen, like interviews like we do and others, and the movie. We won't talk about the movie itself because there was some untrue stuff in there, but we don't talk about that. But this is a primary time right now where the country is nervous about the voting. We just voted, and now they're waiting for several states like Georgia and other states, and the parties are disagreeing. People are out here disagreeing,
and that's all you can hear on TV.
Right, but right now, when you went to the military, when you went to be a part of the Tuskegee Airmen, that was segregation. I mean, absolutely. and you went through it. All of y'all went through that, and today we have it, yes, but look at the time that you was there and the time today. So just to tell me a little bit about, give us some information relating to back to the young people, what they can learn from you as a Tuskegee Airman, being one of the youngest ones there at 96 years old, it'll be 97 in March, right?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about what they can learn from what you've experienced and what's going on today as far as from a political perspective.
Well, Sue, one of the things that, and I hope young people understand this. The Tuskegee Airmen were not the only blacks who participated in World War II to the benefit of the United States of America.
Mm-hmm, that's true.
I hasten to say that they are Buffalo soldiers, they were Navy personnel, and their stories that I didn't even know until just a few years ago about what the Navy and what the Marines and what the Army in general did. And that's because segregation was so embedded in the United States that not just the South, but even in the North, there was segregation. And the Tuskegee Airmen, through their efforts, were able to convince Harry Truman, after Mrs. Roosevelt made sure that through her husband, that the Tuskegee Airmen became a part of the Army Air Corps in World War II. There were others, like I said, and I hasten to, there's a book that I just saw 2 weeks ago called Forgotten. And I don't remember the lady's name, but I suggest that young people read that book, and they will find out that not only did the Tuskegee Airmen, but the Buffalo soldiers and the Navy, the guys in the Navy, and all contributed in a way that made the United States better, because some segregation did get wiped out. Now, as far as the Tuskegee Airmen are concerned, we trained bomber pilots and navigators and for World War II, but unfortunately, maybe fortunately, they never got into combat. The 477, they flew twin-engine planes, the B-25. In fact, one of them lives around the corner from me, John Curry, who's second lieutenant. He was a second lieutenant, flew twin-engine planes. In fact, he was one of my mentors in the service. I met him at Tuskegee Army Airfield at 2 o'clock in the morning when we arrived in Chehaw, Alabama. I was introduced to the gentleman that I sat next to in the barracks. And he took this little boy, because that's what I was, this 18-year-old boy, and he took me under his wing, and like today, even today, he's 100 years old, he still is mentoring me. But that's the one thing that I hope when I talk to young people, they understand that the Tuskegee Airmen don't represent the crab in the barrel. We represent the crab in the barrel in an opposite direction, because they reached up and pulled us up to them. They reached down and pulled them up, us up to them, so that we were able to contribute when we came out of the service. We were able to contribute to the fact that there was no representation in the District of Columbia for its citizens, and in the South, in many cases, They made sure that they couldn't do it. That didn't stop segregation to slipping in to the north.
But one thing, another thing too is that when you think about the Tuskegee Airmen, is that it was proof, not for you and not for others, but so many people throughout the world, that these are highly intelligent men and women. Because you always told me that the men was fighting. Yes, there was a pilot,
Yeah.
but you also had many people that represented the Tuskegee Airmen, the ones who fixed the planes, the one who provided food, the ones who, so many positions that took place on that campus there that caused the Tuskegee Airmen to be who they are today.
Absolutely.
And that's what I wanted. When you said not in a barrel, you weren't pulling each other down. You was like helping,
reaching down,
and bringing that person up, bringing that person up, bringing that person up. And that's something that we need to realize is that
always.
Yes, and that's one reason I look at me getting excited about it, because I get so excited about Tuskegee Airmen. And another thing is that just the fighters, the bombers, like the P-40, was it P-47, P-41?
For the P-47 was one of the combat. Well, we flew P-39s, P-47s, and P-51s. The P-51 was the last plane that the unit used. I never flew any one of those. I was a student at the end of the war, so that I never got to fly combat. But I thought I was ready, because my instructor, as I said, my instructor, Captain Jackson out of Fort Worth, Texas, taught me how to dogfight, which meant that you had to learn how to kill somebody in another airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to do some things that most students couldn't do, and that was because these men came back from combat and taught us. Because one of the differences back in World War II was the black units didn't have the privilege of having somebody come back from overseas to teach them as the white units did.
That's a
The
good
white
point.
units,
That's a good point.
The white units had guys like Flip Cochran, and I remember his name because they made a comic strip about him.
Mm-hmm.
He came back, and ultimately he did work with the Tuskegee Airmen, but for the most part, the Tuskegee Airmen had to learn for themselves how to compete with the German Air Force and the Italian Air Force.
Billy, you know what? And it's, outstanding pilots. And I still think about this. I know it's a little better now in this country. Not a whole lot better, but it's a little better. It's that when they excellent, top-notch, #1 pilots in this world pretty much changed the definition of World War II. Even with that, when they left and walked in, there were pilots that still could not get a job. The commercial airlines did not hire them, Billy.
Well, I have a story that's a true story about that. In fact, my job before I went into training as a pilot was as a pre-aviation cadet. I had a job assigning airplanes to the instructors and the students in basic flying. One of the instructors in basic flying was a black man who, John, oh my, I can't remember his name, and he was the first person that I ever flew with. Oh, J.O. Plinton. J.O. Plinton was an instructor, and he, one Sunday afternoon, when the instructors were not teaching, they would go out and fly just to get time in and perform better. And J.O. said, Bill, well, how'd you like to go up today? That was the first time I ever got in an airplane and took off the ground. J.O. Clinton took me up, and we flew with a 500-foot ceiling, which means that the clouds were down to 500 feet, and we didn't go above that. The day I was leaving Tuskegee to come home to be discharged, J.O. Clinton said, Bill, I'm going to South America and starting an airline. Come on, go with me. Well, I was 19 years old, and as I said, I had not graduated from high school. I wasn't very smart about things like that. I told him, no, I'm going home to my mother. And anyway, he went, and there's a book called Black Wings that every black student ought to, every student, not just black, but every student ought to get and read. And you'll see on page 147 a picture of J.O. Clinton and his crew with the airline that he formed in South America. His airline was bought by Eastern Airlines, and he became the first black vice president of a major airline, Eastern Airlines. So you see that those guys were very intelligent. They were able to do things that I never dreamt of, being an administrator of that kind. In fact, I went to high school to be a carpenter. But he opened up an area for young people to do something other than manual work. And even after the war, my wife and I owned a beauty shop, and we had a man's service in there. And the ladies in there knew my affiliation with aviation, and one of them came to me and said, Mr. Fauntleroy, we've got a Navy pilot down in the men's salon. So I went down and talked to him, and what came out of the conversation was, I can't find a job. He says, I've got over 6,000 hours of flying, and I can't find a job. So I went back to the telephone in my wife's office and called J.O. Clinton. Now, I haven't seen him since the day I got discharged, yes. But we communicated. I said, J.O., I've got a young man who's a Navy pilot. He can't get a job. And he said, ask him to send his stuff to us, to me.
Yes.
Well, 2 weeks later, Camilla and I were downtown with our lawyer about the beauty shop. And the people at the beauty shop always knew where we were, because if something came up, we had to respond to it. And they let us know that this gentleman was looking for us. And they let him know, and he came to the restaurant, and the maitre d' came over, Mr. Fauntleroy, there's a gentleman who wants to leave something at your table. So he came up and gave Camilla and I a bottle of champagne. He didn't know we were teetotalers, but he gave us a bottle of champagne and thanked us and left. And my wife said, why did he do that? I said, because he just got a job making $65,000 a year doing what he loves, flying.
Flying, yes.
And that's the kind of relationship that the Tuskegee Airmen all over have had that. We had a gentleman die.
And that's one thing that I noticed, that you and others have been so fortunate, so blessed, and still providing to the community, still providing to young people,
right?
And telling young people the importance of doing local voting, right. So you would know the judges that's going to be make a decision in reference to your life, or Absolutely. Even doing national voting, because you've gone through so much and you felt it, and right. You still feel some things today. I mean, right. You had friends. I know we talked. Right. And you had a friend to pass for about a year or 2 years ago. One of your best friends.
Well,
and
General McGee, who died on his he was 102 years old when he died. His family, to show you how they do stuff with us youngsters.
Now you remember to our listeners, you know, he is 96 years old, but as far as looking at the Tuskegee Airmen,
I'm a kid.
He's a kid. 96, and he's 97 in March, so he's a kid.
Yeah.
But I remember when he called you, just before he passed.
Yeah.
But you didn't know it. He just you called.
Right.
Yes.
His family made me, an honorary pallbearer at his funeral, and I cherish that because at my 95th birthday, the Tuskegee Airmen gave me a parade, and General McGee led the parade for Billy, little Billy, and it makes me understand what God does with you. Has nothing to do primarily with you. It's just that He is letting people know that there are things He can do that no one else
that
can.
we cannot do.
Yeah.
And I think from 18 years old, you experienced all of this as a Tuskegee Airman. You came back to Washington, D.C. You went to Howard University. You finished your career in engineering, right? And then became one of the main engineer for our subway system here right in Washington, D.C.
Well, I thought I was the main engineer, but I really wasn't.
I'm going to think you weren't the main engineer, but just how God used you from an 18-year-old leaving home from Washington, D.C., taking that risk, being blessed to meet so many people, and came back and made a difference in Washington, D.C. as an engineer.
Well, there's one other person that ought to be mentioned there, because I went to Howard after I completed my high school work, and I met a young lady who impressed me so much that she stayed with me as my wife from 61 years, 11 months, and 15 days, Camilla. And as a result of that, she is the reason I was able to finish college, because after we got married, I couldn't. She refused to marry me until I had a job, and so
that's very important.
Yeah, it's very important, and I understood that, and I quit college and went to work, and after 4 or 5 years, she says, I've only known you in school, because I continued to go to night school, but you can't finish night school, engineering in night school at Howard. You have to go to the day school to get your labs and stuff. Anyway, she convinced me, and we worked it out so that I was able to go back to college and work with the job that I got after she told me she wouldn't marry me. But that's how I ended up at Metro. And fortunately, I was able to become the urban planner for the District of Columbia portion of the Metro system. Now, I represented that. There was a representative for Maryland and Virginia, and we all worked together. And I'm not the main engineer, but I was one of the engineers who helped put together the Metro system, which is, I understand now, they're just opening the line to Dulles.
Well, that's another show talking about when they opened the line, they did not open the line, and some saying, what big mistake we made.
And that was.
But if you look back right now, Billy, right this second, right now, and all the experience that you had, could you say that it was worth it? It was worth it.
Yes. It was.
Why do you say that, Billy?
Well, I was able to send our son to college and pay for it. My wife and I did a lot of traveling. In fact, every summer for 20 years, we went to Cape Cod for our summer vacation. Um, when I got my son out of college and got that paid for, we went to Hawaii, went to Puerto Rico, Trinidad, and the Bahamas on during the winter months. So those are the benefits that I achieved during that time, and that's the reason I'm poor now, because we spent our time enjoying ourselves, and our son often says you had the best of friends, and because he met them and he was with us when we were at Cape Cod and any vacations that we took.
But Billy, you know what? When you say you're poor now, and that's a whole definition for so many people.
Oh yeah.
And looking at you now as a Tuskegee Airman, and you've traveled all over the world. You've talked to many young people. You talk to seniors. You talk to other pilots.
Right.
So what is poor? I see you as a very wealthy, rich person.
Well, poor is related to how much money you have. But I certainly am wealthy in, for example, one of the things that I was able to achieve while working for Metro was a trip to London, Hamburg, Germany, and Brussels to look at their systems to see what we wanted to do or wanted not to do. As we did with Boston, looking at the system in Boston, looking at the system in New York, and looking at the system in Philadelphia, looking at the system in San Francisco.
So you're all over the world looking at systems so we can have the best system in the world.
Absolutely.
So with that, Billy, in our closing today, this evening, is that do you feel like you are an American?
Oh yes, yeah, and regardless of a gentleman who became the president of the United States and was a millionaire at 3, and all he's done, in my opinion, is try to destroy what everybody else has been fighting for in the United States. And I think more of these people that I've been associated with, like General McGee, who to me did more for the United States than did anyone who's been in the White House, and that includes even George Bush, who gave us a medal back in 2007, and the ladies were represented there by one of the ladies who was the wife of one of our instructors, and she worked in the office during World War II. And she received the gold medal, as did I, and anybody else who was in the service between 1941 and 1949.
So you look and say,
those are people.
You are an American. You are, and proud of it.
Yeah.
For what you have done, and so many people have done in this world. Young people need to hear that, to understand. And Billy, we thank you. We thank you for taking the time to just be with us today. I know you always going places, but just taking the time to talk to us so that every day we can learn a little bit more about our history, the people who stood on the front line for us, and we have absolutely no excuse to know that God is calling us to do some things, and we sit back and don't do them. So thank you, Billy Fauntleroy, for William Billy Fauntleroy for taking the time to be with us today. For our listeners,
can I say one more thing to you, please? Our time, as I'm talking to you, their names and people ought to know. Wiley Selden, was a test pilot. Nobody, you don't read about that during about the Tuskegee Airmen.
And that's why we have you.
Yeah,
That's why we have you and others to telling us right here in your home about a little bit more history.
yeah. Wendell Pruitt, who
Yes.
who sank a destroyer with his airplane, with bombs from his shots from his airplane, not bombs, but shots from his airplane. He and another guy knocked down this German destroyer. The whites never did anything like that. But and you'll never hear about it until you hear it from one of us. Or, well, I guess it's in the book Black Wings.
And hear it from one like you, but also people who write the books, or people who are writing, people like you, other Tuskegee Airmen have written books, and so we're doing history over and over again. So again, we thank you, Billy. We're out of time.
Thank Obama, our President Obama too, because he honored us with the opening of the African American Museum with a program.
Yes.
And when the Tuskegee Airmen came out on the stage, the people applauded and the ladies were crying. And I'll never forget that, because to see it from my wheelchair, these people are talking about people like General McGee, who was there, a guy named Jefferson, who died just a couple of months ago out of Detroit. Those were people, like I said, that changed the United States after World War II.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you again. Thank you, and thank you again, for our brothers and sisters. Please continue to study your history,
Amen.
to read, to vote, and to understand what our elders have gone through and continue to go through. May God bless you, and have a good evening. You've been listening to Sunday Evening with Reverend Sue.
Mercy more than life.